D.Rat, the junk merchant, ran the only bus service for miles. His bicycle bus was made out of a roller skate and a cotton reel from his own junkyard. Everyone called it the rattletrap because it was so dangerous and overcrowded. Each day the passengers clambered aboard to get to school and work. Each day someone fell off and had to walk the rest of the way. "Rotten bus service!" "Stop your squeaking!" "Eek! I'm not pushing!" When the rattletrap reached a hill, everyone had to get off and push. Only D.Rat remained seated, counting his money from the fares. And of course, everybody was always late for work, even the judge. "Everybody push!" D.Rat was a terrible driver, too. One day, the bus tipped over going around a corner, and all the passengers were spilled out into the hedge. Luckily, no one was seriously hurt. "Dangerous driver!" "Wobbly mice!" That evening, the mice who lived in a shoe decided to do something about the rattletrap. "We take our lives in our paws every time we ride in it," said Pa. And then everyone talked at once. Mary. "I didn't push." Sue. "I tore my dress." Anne. "Mick fell off again." Grandma. "It's not safe for grannies." Mick. "I had to walk." Ma. "It's too crowded to knit." Tim. Pip. Grandpa. Pa. They talked deep into the night until suddenly Pip had an idea. "Why don't we build our own bus?" he said. "What a wonderful plan," said the family. "Where do we begin?" "In D.Rat's junkyard," answered Pip. So the next morning they went to D.Rat and asked if they could buy a few things from his junkyard. D.Rat, who never trusted his own left paw, let alone mice, pointed to a pile of rubbish. "Choose from that lot," he snarled. They picked through the rubbish and found just what they needed. "This is a solar topi." "It's a sun helmet." "Eek! It's ticking." They needed a lock. "This will make the chassis." They needed a clock. "This will be our motor." They needed an explorer's hat. "It's a pith helmet." "This should keep us dry." And they needed 4 pulleys. "What do we need these for?" "The wheels, silly." Then the mice set to work. First, they attached the 4 pulleys with rope tires to the corners of the lock. Then they hammered in 4 pillars. "I'll fetch my knitting." "Oops!" "Eek!" "Sorry, Ma." With much puffing and blowing, they managed to haul up the clock into position. Then they strapped the clock to the key in the lock, and they built a spiral staircase. Pa removed the balance wheel and wound the clock. "Phew, it's stiff." "Need any help, Pa?" The motor roared. The hands whizzed around, and Grandpa attached the drive belt to the wheels. The hardest job was to lift the hat over the spiral staircase and onto the 4 pillars, but they managed. "Come down, Sue." "Knit one, purl one." They built a stairway up the side of the hat with a door at the top. Then they put in windows around the middle and made a balcony to keep passengers from falling off. "This is safe." "I need your needles, Ma." "No, they're not for poking holes." The driver's seat was on the top deck with seats all around, shaded by a huge umbrella. "I can see for miles." "I'll drive." "We need some steps." The controls went down past the playroom windows, through the brim, into the engine. At last, all that remained to build were steps to the lower deck and a rope ladder to the brim. Wait till D.Rat sees this! We're ready to go! What a clever family! And the clockwork bus was finished. Everyone came to admire the clockwork bus, except for D.Rat, who was out gathering junk. Everyone got a free ride on the first day. It's free today! Pa wound up the motor with some help from Pip. Grandma climbed into the driver's seat, and as they set off, everyone cheered. Wait for me! When D.Rat arrived in his rattletrap, he saw his passengers all happily seated in the bus. And with Grandma driving, nobody fell off as the bus easily climbed the hill. D.Rat was furious. I'll fix them, shouted D.Rat. He dug a big hole for the bus to fall into. Then he disguised the trap with twigs and leaves and waited. And waited for the clockwork bus to return. At last, he heard it coming and hopped onto a twig to watch. Then crash! He fell in. As the bus came by, everyone laughed and cheered to see D.Rat's head poking out of the hole. Digging for worms, D.Rat! The next day, D.Rat had a new idea. He blocked the narrow road with his junk. That would stop the bus. Well, it did, so the passengers got off and cleared it. Unhappily for D.Rat, the junk rolled and bounced downhill onto the rattletrap, which was smashed into little pieces. Ruined my bicycle bus! Now that D.Rat had no bus, he was even more determined the mice should not have one either. As he watched Pip winding the bus, he had yet another idea. I'll steal their key, that's the plan, he said with a chuckle. Do you need any help, Pip? Phew! So that night, he crept toward the clockwork bus. Stealthily, he removed the key. An instant too late, an alert watchmouse squirted a fire extinguisher at D.Rat, who escaped into the night like a soapy phantom. Next morning, the watchmouse told the mice who lived in a shoe that their key had been stolen by someone very large and covered in sticky foam. Oops! The mice didn't have to guess too hard who the thief might be. And anyway, Mick was already following sticky, foamy footprints. Found a clue, Mick? Looks rather ratty to me. They followed the footprints to the junkyard. And there was a sticky D.Rat hiding in a mug amidst the ruins of his rattletrap, clutching their key. Caught you, said Pa. We'll see what the judge has to say about this. There's the thief. The prisoner was brought before the judge, who was one of the passengers. 3 years hard work, commanded the judge. And since you're so fond of keys, you can be clockwinder on the clockwork bus. I won't, shouted D.Rat. 4 years, said the judge. The mice who lived in a shoe run the only bus service for miles. Their clockwork bus has cheap seats for all. No one falls off, and everyone gets to work on time, as long as D.Rat keeps winding the clock. And even though they have to put up with him, he's kept too busy to talk.